Well, there are so many new Chinese smartphone vendors that have really taken a hold of growth. And what we're seeing, according to Nomura, China's smartphone sales growth did actually turn negative in the first quarter after 2 years of extremely rapid growth. And so these companies are looking elsewhere in order to grow their market share. Let's start off with Xiaomi, also known as China's Apple. It leapfrogged Samsung in the second quarter of sales to become the top selling vendor in China. It secured about 5.1% of global market share. Now, Xiaomi spent upwards of 1.9 billion yuan upgrading production facilities, and it expects to ship about 60 million smartphones this year. That's up from 18 million in 2013. It also plans to expand into about 10 countries this year, including India, Brazil, and Mexico. Moving on to CoolPad, though, which is China's third largest vendor by market share. It's also the 7th largest globally with 3.7% of the market. And it was the first vendor to really, in that race to the bottom, to start selling a smartphone handset for under 1,000 yuan or $160. Now, CoolPad plans to ship about 60 million smartphones this year and will spend millions to promote its brand across Southeast Asia, Europe, and also the US. Moving on to Lenovo, it's the #1 smartphone vendor in China and the 4th largest globally. In the second quarter, it increased smartphone revenue outside China to 20% of total sales. That's up from just 5% a year ago. And also, after purchasing the Motorola unit from Google, Lenovo is very much gearing up for an aggressive expansion in overseas emerging markets. And it recently launched the Moto E, which currently retails for about $150. And Huawei, of course, also growing extremely fast. It shipped 21 million units in the second quarter, giving it a market share of about 4.7%. Now, the company says it's seeing the strongest growth in places like the Middle East and Africa and Latin America, with 275% to 550% year-on-year growth, respectively, in the second quarter. And moving on finally to ZTE. Earlier this week, the company launched the Nubia in the US, which retails for about $280. In Africa, it's using its position as one of the continent's largest telecom equipment makers to make a name for itself in the smartphone market, which is quite interesting. And it's currently in talks with Firefox to launch 3 low-cost smartphone devices across South Africa. It also has strong sales in Kenya and Somalia, Bernie.
My question is this. I mean, there's been so many there have been so many, I have more than this question, but let's start off with this. There have been so many allegations of cyber hacking and Chinese, getting in their code and systems and embedding themselves. Aren't people around the world going to be a little bit nervous, about the prospect of using something that had its design roots in China? Is that a valid concern, or am I being completely, xenophobic saying something like that?
Look, that has definitely been an issue for a couple of these companies looking to operate in the US. We know that that's been a problem for both ZTE and Huawei, trying to secure contracts in the US and also trying to sell their phones over in the US. But what we're seeing is that they actually started very early on in Africa expanding. Around the 1990s, they started expanding their telecom equipment in Africa. So that is seen as the real area for smartphone growth going forward. And when you look at penetration rates, you're not really seeing the penetration rates that you're seeing of, say, China, which 90% of current sales of handset vendors now are smartphones in China. So a lot of growth in Africa.
I still get the sense that we're talking low-end stuff here. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it, but cheap stuff, I mean, if the Moto E retails for $150, it ain't an iPhone. It can't, take you into the Apple universe. It's not like Samsung. It's not going to control your refrigerator. I mean, aren't people going to want more things like, climate control, controlling your life, and having a multifaceted device that can do so many other things for you except just text and WeChat?
I mean, the thing is
they can get all that for
$150.
Cheaper.
It's cheaper to manufacture these phones than ever before, and you've got something like Firefox with the operating system that's coming out. That's going to be really big for the emerging markets where we're seeing all of the growth throughout Latin America, throughout Africa.
All right. Maybe they could work on their, branding and names a little bit. I mean, this ZTE one, Julia, the Nubia. Nubia. Is it nubile or new brand spanking phone? I mean, really? Sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have said that.